Prince Harry sat alone in the United Kingdom High Court this week, visibly shaken, fighting a legal war for a wife who could not be bothered to cross an ocean to stand beside him. Let that sink in for a moment. The man who walked away from his entire family, his country, his birthright, and his legacy, all in the name of protecting Meghan Markle, found himself isolated in a London courtroom while the woman he sacrificed everything for stayed behind in Montecito. And the excuse? Sources reveal that Meghan was simply too busy reeling from her Netflix rejection to fly over and support her husband during one of the most consequential moments of his legal career. The irony here is absolutely staggering. This court case against Associated News Group was supposed to be about vindicating Meghan, about proving that the British press had victimized her, about showing the world that Harry was right to wage war against the tabloids on her behalf. Instead, what we witnessed was a husband standing utterly alone, facing hostile cross-examination while his wife posted dancing videos on Instagram from the comfort of their $11 million California mansion. If this does not tell you everything you need to know about the dynamics of this marriage, I genuinely do not know what will. Insiders who were present at the High Court described Harry as appearing rattled from the moment he took the stand. One source put it bluntly, saying he looked like a man who expected backup that never came. Another observer noted that the prince seemed genuinely thrown off when he realized he would be facing this alone. And folks, we need to be crystal clear about what this means. This is not some minor scheduling conflict. This is not a case of Meghan having prior commitments that could not be moved. This is a calculated decision by a wife to let her husband face the fire while she protects her own crumbling brand back home. The optics are devastating no matter how you spin them. Here is a man who has spent years telling the world that Meghan is his priority, that protecting her is his life's mission, that he would do anything for her. Yet when the roles were reversed, when Harry needed someone in his corner during grueling courtroom testimony, that support simply was not there. Sources close to the couple say that behind closed doors, the tension over this decision was palpable. But ultimately, Meghan's priorities won out, as they seemingly always do in this relationship. What makes this even more explosive is the timing. This court case has been building for years. Harry has been preparing testimony, gathering evidence, and publicly positioning himself as a crusader against media intrusion. For Meghan to skip this moment, the moment when all of that preparation would be put to the test, sends a message that cannot be unsaid. And the question burning through every royal watcher's mind right now is simple. Who really holds the power in this marriage? And what happens when Harry finally realizes the answer? But the absence from court is just the beginning of this explosive story. And what actually happened when Harry took that witness stand reveals cracks that go far deeper than anyone expected. Harry was called to testify earlier than anticipated after Associated News wrapped up their disposition ahead of schedule, catching everyone off guard. His legal team, led by David Sherburne, had publicly insisted for weeks that the prince was ready, that he had been prepared for years to face this moment. But insiders who watched him take the stand paint a very different picture. One courtroom observer described Harry as looking blindsided, as though the weight of facing this alone had only just hit him. Another source noted that without Meghan's presence to anchor him, the prince appeared to be operating without his usual confidence. The preparation claims ring hollow when you examine what actually transpired. Harry's lawyer had boasted about his client's readiness, telling press that the prince had been waiting years for his day in court. Yet from the moment questioning began, cracks started to show. Sources say Harry appeared increasingly uncomfortable as Associated News lawyers picked apart his timeline, challenged his recollections, and forced him to confront inconsistencies in his own statements. For a man who was supposedly ready for years, he certainly did not look the part. And here is where the irony becomes almost too thick to stomach. Meghan Markle once told the world, during their infamous Oprah interview, that man loves me so much, he would do anything for me. She bragged about Harry's devotion, about his willingness to sacrifice everything in her name. Yet when that same man needed her, when he was sitting in a witness box, fighting a battle that was fundamentally about defending her honor, she was thousands of miles away dealing with her own professional failures. Allow me to translate what this really means. Harry's devotion is apparently a one-way street. The testimony that emerged from that courtroom should concern anyone who has been following the Sussex narrative. Harry made statements that directly contradicted years of carefully constructed messaging. He admitted things that Meghan's team would almost certainly have coached him to avoid, and he did so without the steadying presence of his wife, without the person who typically controls every aspect of their public image. Sources familiar with legal proceedings say that spouses attending court appearances is not just about emotional support. It is about maintaining message discipline. Without Meghan there, Harry was flying solo in more ways than one. What emerged from Harry's mouth over the course of his testimony did more than embarrass him. It potentially unraveled years of narrative building that the couple has invested millions of dollars in constructing. The stories they have told about media victimization, about being hounded unfairly, about having no recourse against tabloid intrusion, all of it came under brutal scrutiny. And Harry, sitting alone without his wife's presence to remind him of their agreed-upon talking points, stumbled into admissions that could haunt them both for years to come. But the real damage Harry inflicted on himself came when he started talking about how his media problems began. And what he said next had even his own lawyers wincing. Harry immediately tripped himself up with one of the most damaging admissions he could have possibly made. Under cross-examination, he acknowledged that his problems with the British media accelerated once he started dating Meghan Markle. Let that land for a moment. The prince, whose entire legal strategy rests on portraying himself as a lifelong victim of tabloid harassment, openly admitted that his worst media experiences coincided with his relationship with his wife. Associated News lawyers must have been barely containing their glee when those words left his mouth. The prince attempted to deflect by blaming the royal family's long-standing never complain, never explain mantra. He argued that this institutional policy left him unable to fight back against what he perceived as unfair coverage. But here is where Harry's argument completely falls apart. When confronted with the fact that his own brother, Prince William, successfully sued over paparazzi photos of Catherine, Harry had no meaningful response. William managed to take legal action while still a working royal, still operating under the same institutional constraints Harry claims prevented him from doing anything. The excuse simply does not hold water. Sources inside the courtroom say that Harry appeared genuinely flustered when this contradiction was pointed out. One observer noted that the prince seemed unprepared for such a basic challenge to his narrative. Another insider suggested that whoever prepped Harry for testimony either did a terrible job or was working with material that simply cannot withstand scrutiny. Either way, the damage was done. Harry had effectively undermined his own case with his own words. What became increasingly clear as testimony progressed was that Harry wanted to shift focus away from the original claims and make everything about Meghan. The case originally centered on events from years before he even met his wife, but the prince seemed determined to redirect attention to more recent grievances about her coverage. Legal experts watching the proceedings noted that this pivot actually weakened his position. By making the case about Meghan when the evidence concerned a different time period entirely, Harry muddied his own legal waters. The never complain, never explain defense is particularly rich, coming from a man who has complained extensively and explained nothing but his own grievances for 5 straight years. Harry has written a memoir complaining about his family. He has sat for multiple television interviews explaining his version of events. He has launched legal action after legal action, all of which involve extensive complaining and explaining. The idea that he was somehow muzzled by royal protocol is laughable to anyone who has paid even minimal attention to his post-royal behavior. One legal commentator put it perfectly, saying Harry cannot claim he was silenced when he has been the loudest voice in the room for half a decade. But the most explosive revelation came when the case turned to Harry's romantic history, and what emerged about his feelings for an ex-girlfriend is sending shockwaves all the way back to Montecito. The legal case against Associated News originally centered not on Meghan Markle but on Harry's relationship with Chelsea Davy, the Zimbabwean businesswoman who has been described as one of the greatest true loves of his life. Chelsea and Harry dated on and off for 7 years, and by all accounts their connection was genuine, deep, and nearly resulted in marriage. She was there through his early military career, his party years, and his gradual maturation into a more serious public figure. For many royal watchers, Chelsea represented the path not taken, the woman who could have been princess but chose freedom instead. And then came the bombshell that nobody saw coming. A source close to the proceedings has made the stunning allegation that Harry still keeps a photograph of Chelsea Davy on his phone. Let that sink in for a moment. A married man who has publicly declared that his wife is his entire world allegedly maintains a photo of his ex-girlfriend on his personal device. If this claim has any truth to it whatsoever, it raises questions that Meghan Markle must be absolutely furious about. One insider put it bluntly, saying no wife wants to hear that her husband is carrying around pictures of an old flame. The contrast between Chelsea's life trajectory and Harry's current situation could not be more stark. After their relationship ended, Chelsea went on to build a successful career as a jewelry designer, got married, had children, and by all accounts leads a happy and private life. She did not need a palace or a prince to find fulfillment. She walked away from the royal spotlight and thrived. Harry, meanwhile, appears to be struggling with nearly every aspect of his post-royal existence. His business ventures are failing, his relationships with family are destroyed, and now his marriage is facing unprecedented scrutiny. During the court proceedings, the dial suddenly shifted from discussing the Davy era to Harry's grievances about coverage of Meghan. Legal observers found this pivot jarring and strategically questionable. The evidence before the court concerned events from the Chelsea years, yet Harry seemed almost desperate to redirect attention toward his wife. Some commentators have suggested this reflects a fundamental problem with the case itself. If the strongest evidence involves an ex-girlfriend rather than the current wife, the legal narrative becomes complicated in ways that benefit no one. Sources say the Chelsea revelations cannot possibly be sitting well back in Montecito. Meghan Markle has worked tirelessly to position herself as the great love of Harry's life, the woman who rescued him from a cold and uncaring institution. The idea that her husband might harbor lingering feelings for someone else, that he might literally carry a reminder of that past relationship in his pocket every day, cuts directly against every narrative she has constructed. One palace insider offered a particularly cutting observation, saying Meghan wanted to be his everything, but you cannot compete with a memory that has never been tarnished by reality. But the Chelsea situation pales in comparison to what emerged about Meghan's own secret activities, and what Harry learned in that courtroom about his wife's hidden PR machine could change everything. One of the most explosive revelations to emerge from Harry's legal battle has nothing to do with tabloid intrusion and everything to do with Meghan Markle's own relationship with the media she claims to despise. Court documents and testimony have revealed that Meghan maintained her own publicity team even while she and Harry were publicly claiming to want nothing more than privacy from press attention. Let that hypocrisy marinate for a moment. The woman who has built her entire post-royal identity around being a victim of media harassment was allegedly orchestrating media coverage behind the scenes the entire time. The details are absolutely damning. Photographs of Meghan outside Kensington Palace, images that she and Harry cited as examples of intrusive paparazzi behavior, were allegedly staged events. Sources claim these photo opportunities were not only coordinated, but were described as very lucrative for all parties involved. And here is the detail that makes it even worse. Meghan had access to private entrances and exits that would have allowed her to avoid photographers entirely. She allegedly chose the public route specifically because cameras would be there. If true, this transforms her from victim to willing participant. What makes this revelation potentially catastrophic for the Sussex legal strategy is the timing of Harry's apparent ignorance. Sources suggest that the prince was reportedly unaware of his wife's continued relationship with her publicity handlers. The woman he was fighting to protect, the woman he had sacrificed his entire family for, was allegedly running a shadow media operation without his knowledge. One legal expert noted that this information completely reframes the narrative, saying you cannot claim to be harassed by people you are actively inviting to photograph you. Associated News could use this information to absolutely dismantle the core claims of Harry's case. If Meghan was coordinating with media outlets, if she was staging photographs, if she was benefiting financially from the very coverage she now claims caused her harm, the entire foundation of their victimhood narrative collapses. The hypocrisy of suing newspapers while secretly feeding stories to those same outlets is the kind of contradiction that juries and judges tend to notice. And once that credibility is lost, it is virtually impossible to recover. The implications extend far beyond this single court case. If evidence exists that Meghan was playing both sides, cultivating media relationships while publicly condemning media intrusion, it calls into question every statement she has ever made about press harassment. The Oprah interview claims, the documentary assertions, the memoir allegations, all of it becomes suspect when filtered through the lens of someone who was allegedly manufacturing her own coverage. One royal commentator did not mince words, saying this is not a woman who was hunted by the press, this is a woman who was using the press and then crying when the coverage turned negative. But the PR revelation is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, and the real reason Meghan stayed home while Harry faced the court alone has everything to do with a devastating professional rejection that has left her reeling. The timing of Meghan's absence from Harry's court appearance was not coincidental. While her husband was being grilled by hostile lawyers in London, Meghan was back in California dealing with what sources describe as a crushing blow to her professional ambitions. Netflix, the streaming giant that had been her golden ticket to entertainment industry relevance, had effectively shown her the door. Her cooking show, the project she had invested enormous personal capital in, failed to generate enough viewer interest to warrant renewal. The woman who wanted to be the next Oprah could not even hold an audience for a cooking program. Let us be brutally honest about what the Netflix failure represents. This was not a situation where Meghan tried her hardest and came up short against impossible odds. Sources close to production say that the Duchess could not be bothered to put in the effort required to make the show successful. Reports suggest she was difficult to work with, resistant to direction, and unwilling to do the unglamorous work that creating quality content requires. One insider described it as expecting champagne results while putting in tap water effort. The streaming service reportedly lost patience with a star who wanted all the glory but none of the grind. The pattern here is impossible to ignore. Meghan's half-hearted commitment to her Netflix projects mirrors growing concerns about her commitment to supporting Harry when it matters most. Both situations reveal a woman who expects maximum results from minimum investment. She wanted Netflix to make her a multimedia mogul without having to earn it. She apparently wanted credit for standing by Harry without actually having to stand by him physically. One commentator put it perfectly, saying Meghan wants the trophy wife title without doing any of the supporting. With her professional reputation in free fall, insiders are openly questioning why Meghan did not use Harry's court appearance as an opportunity for positive optics. Think about it strategically for a moment. A wife flying across the ocean to support her husband during a difficult legal battle would generate sympathetic coverage. It would reinforce the image of a devoted couple united against their enemies. It would give Meghan something she desperately needs right now, which is a positive headline that has nothing to do with her own failed ventures. Instead, she stayed home, and the stories write themselves. The Netflix rejection appears to have sent Meghan into a tailspin from which she has not recovered. Sources say she was blindsided by the decision not to renew, having convinced herself that the show was a hit despite ratings evidence to the contrary. Her reaction to the news reportedly consumed so much of her emotional bandwidth that flying to London to support Harry simply was not on the table. One insider close to the couple offered a devastating assessment, saying when Meghan is struggling, everything else stops, including her husband's needs. That is the dynamic of this marriage in a single sentence. But the Netflix disaster and the court absence have revealed something even more troubling about the Sussex situation, and the friends who once surrounded them are now turning with receipts in hand. Harry made a chilling admission during his court testimony that reveals just how isolated the Sussexes have become. He told the court that he is now concerned about which friends were conspiring against him, a statement that speaks volumes about the paranoid atmosphere that has apparently consumed their Montecito existence. The prince, who once had a wide circle of loyal companions, now trusts virtually no one outside his immediate household. And the darkest irony is that many of these now suspicious friends were pushed away by Meghan herself when she entered his life. These are the same friends that Meghan allegedly cut off when she and Harry got married. Royal insiders have long maintained that the Duchess systematically isolated her husband from his support network, viewing outside influences as threats to her control over the relationship. Old-school friends who had known Harry for decades suddenly found themselves frozen out. Military buddies who had served alongside the prince discovered their calls went unreturned. One by one, the people who might have offered Harry perspective and honest counsel were removed from the equation. Now those same people are potential witnesses against him. Former members of Harry's inner circle could see the writing on the wall long before the current crisis emerged. Sources say that several of these ex-friends predicted exactly this outcome, warning Harry years ago that the path he was on would lead to isolation and regret. Their warnings were ignored, and in some cases they were cut off specifically because they had the audacity to express concern. One former confidant reportedly told associates that Harry would not listen to anyone who questioned Meghan, and now look where that blind devotion has gotten him. The potential testimony or leaked information from these estranged friends could devastate Harry's credibility in ways that go far beyond the current court case. These are people who witnessed the relationship from the inside. They attended private gatherings. They heard conversations that were never meant to be public. They know things about the early days of Harry and Meghan's courtship, about the decision-making process that led to their royal exit, about promises made and broken. If even one of these former friends decides to share what they know, the carefully constructed Sussex mythology could crumble overnight. The isolation strategy that Meghan employed may now be backfiring spectacularly on both of them. By cutting off Harry's friends, she eliminated the people who might have served as buffers during difficult times. By creating an us-against-the-world mentality, she ensured that when things went wrong, there would be no one to call. And by treating everyone outside their bubble as a potential enemy, she has turned potential allies into people with axes to grind. One royal commentator summarized it perfectly, saying Meghan wanted Harry all to herself, and now she has exactly that. A husband with no friends, no family, and no one left to support him but her. But while Harry was expressing paranoia about betrayal in a London courtroom, his wife was making a desperate move on social media that has royal watchers cringing and critics sharpening their knives. While Harry faced grueling cross-examination thousands of miles away, Meghan Markle was busy crafting what critics are calling the most transparently staged social media moment of her career. She posted a video to Instagram showing herself dancing barefoot in what appeared to be her home, with the caption claiming that 4-year-old Lilibet had filmed the footage. The timing was impossible to ignore. Her husband was being hammered with difficult questions in court, and she was posting carefree dancing videos as if nothing significant was happening. The disconnect between Harry's reality and Meghan's Instagram fantasy could not have been more glaring. Critics immediately noticed that the supposedly candid footage had a suspiciously professional quality for something allegedly filmed by a toddler. The framing was perfect. The lighting was ideal. The movement of the camera, while slightly shaky, bore none of the chaotic hallmarks of actual child cinematography. Anyone who has ever let a 4-year-old handle their phone knows what real child-filmed footage looks like, and this was not it. One social media analyst bluntly stated that this video has professional fingerprints all over it, calling the Lilibet claim an insulting fiction designed to make the content seem spontaneous. The spontaneous barefoot dance was widely interpreted as a direct clap back at the divorce rumors and homesick Harry headlines that have been circulating with increasing frequency. "Look at me," the video seemed to scream. "Everything is fine. My marriage is perfect. "I am so happy, I am literally dancing." But the performative nature of the gesture only fueled more speculation about what the Sussexes are really trying to hide. When you have to post evidence of your happiness, when you need social media to convince people that your life is wonderful, something is usually very wrong behind the scenes. Royal commentators were absolutely merciless in their assessment of the Instagram post. One called it unseemly and unroyal, noting that no member of the working royal family would ever post such content during a family member's legal proceedings. Another compared it to a hostage video, suggesting that the forced cheerfulness and desperate energy of the dancing read as someone trying too hard to convince the audience of something that is not true. A third observer wondered aloud whether Meghan was deliberately trying to upstage Harry or simply so self-absorbed that his court appearance did not register as important. The contrast between Harry's vulnerable position in that London courtroom and Meghan's curated Instagram happiness perfectly encapsulates the current state of their marriage. He is fighting real battles with real consequences while she is choreographing fantasy content for social media approval. He is exposed and alone while she is protected and performing. One royal insider offered perhaps the most cutting take, saying Harry is bleeding in public while Meghan is dancing in private, and somehow she thinks this makes her look good. The lack of self-awareness is genuinely staggering. But the Instagram dance is just the latest symptom of a marriage that insiders say is showing serious strain, and the whispers about Harry's growing unhappiness are becoming too loud to ignore. Tabloid stories about tension between Harry and Meghan, and claims that the prince is missing the life he left behind, are increasing in both frequency and specificity. These are no longer vague rumors from anonymous sources, but detailed accounts from people who claim direct knowledge of the couple's situation. Reports describe Harry as very much in flux behind the scenes, questioning decisions he made years ago and struggling to find purpose in his current existence. The man who once seemed certain about his path now appears profoundly lost. The signs of strain are everywhere for those willing to look. Meghan told Jamie Kern-Lima during a recent interview that she was tired of the prove-it game, tired of constantly having to demonstrate her worth and happiness to skeptical observers. Yet her social media behavior tells a completely different story. She constantly posts content designed to prove her happiness, to demonstrate her fulfillment, to show the world that she made the right choice. The contradiction is glaring. Someone who is genuinely content does not need to spend this much energy convincing others of that contentment. Parallels to Charles and Diana are becoming impossible to ignore. Before the truth about that marriage emerged, similar whispers circulated for years. Sources spoke of tension. Insiders noted that the couple seemed disconnected during public appearances. Stories about unhappiness leaked to the press despite official denials. The palace maintained the fiction long after everyone could see that the relationship was broken. History does not repeat itself exactly, but it certainly rhymes, and the rhythm of the Sussex situation sounds hauntingly familiar to anyone who remembers the Wales marriage collapse. Harry's self-appointed role as Meghan's protector, the dragon who would save her from a hostile world, is being tested in ways he clearly did not anticipate. He signed up to defend her against external threats, not to defend himself alone in courtrooms while she stays home. He expected to be her champion, not a solo warrior fighting battles that were supposed to be about protecting her. The psychological toll of this reversal must be immense. One source close to Harry described him as a man who does not recognize his own life anymore, someone who thought he knew what he was signing up for and is now realizing he was wrong. Sources say Harry is questioning everything about his current existence, from the decision to leave the royal family, to the choice to settle in California, to the wisdom of his various legal battles. The certainty that once characterized his public statements has given way to doubt. The defiance has softened into what some observers describe as exhaustion and confusion. One insider who has known Harry for years offered a particularly poignant observation, saying the Harry I knew had a light in him, and watching that light dim has been heartbreaking to witness from afar. But the question that remains unanswered, the question that will determine everything about the Sussex future, is how much longer Harry can continue down this path, and what happens when he finally reaches his breaking point. Harry finds himself in a position that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. He is alone in London, fighting legal battles for a wife who could not be bothered to show up, watching his testimony get picked apart by lawyers while the woman he sacrificed everything for posts dancing videos from their California mansion. The isolation is nearly complete. Netflix is gone. The friendships he once treasured are destroyed. His relationship with his father and brother appears beyond repair, and the court case that was supposed to vindicate everything he has done may instead expose uncomfortable truths about the life he has built and the woman he built it with. The evidence that emerged during this legal proceeding does not support the narrative Harry and Meghan have been selling. The admission that media problems accelerated with Meghan, the revelation about maintained PR relationships, the inconsistencies in timeline and testimony, all of it chips away at the victim narrative they have constructed so carefully. Even if Harry wins some technical legal victory, the damage to their credibility may be permanent. The world has now seen the man behind the curtain, and he looks far less heroic than the mythology suggested. What comes next for the Sussexes is genuinely uncertain. They are running out of business ventures, running out of allies, running out of family connections to leverage, and seemingly running out of stories to tell. The Netflix money is drying up with no renewal in sight. The Spotify deal collapsed spectacularly. The interview circuit has diminishing returns when you keep repeating the same grievances. They have played nearly every card in their hand, and the cards that remain are increasingly weak. One entertainment industry observer summarized their position bluntly, saying they are talent with no platform, victims with no credibility, and celebrities with rapidly diminishing relevance. The question that hangs over everything is simple. How long can Harry continue fighting Meghan's wars while she stays home? How many more courtrooms will he sit in alone? How many more sacrifices will he make for a partner who appears unable or unwilling to reciprocate? The dynamic of this marriage has been exposed in the harsh light of a London courtroom, and what was revealed should trouble anyone who cares about Harry's well-being. He is a man who gave up everything, and what he received in return is looking less and less like a fair exchange with every passing day. Do you think Meghan should have been in that courtroom? Or does her absence tell us everything we need to know about this marriage? The answers may be uncomfortable, but they are becoming harder to avoid with every headline. Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.